It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we cover the latest property news every morning on iHeartRadio, Spotify and Apple, and of course wherever you get your podcasts from these days. And it's a Thursday morning, waking up to January the 18th for 2024. Here's a question: have you managed to buy a property since the start of the new year? Congratulations to you if you've managed to do that. We certainly love buying property, don't we, in this country? Australians have $10.3 trillion of their wealth tied up in the housing market. Now, by comparison, that is more than 3 times the value of stocks on the ASX. And CoreLogic tells us that the housing represents almost 57% of household wealth. So we love property. It is in our DNA, and that is certainly set to continue for 2024. And talking of continuing, in just a moment, we go back to the time tunnel this morning with our summer series of real estate podcasts. And coming up this morning, we go back to August of last year when we spoke with Chris Gilmour. Now, he's talking not only about the Brisbane market, but also Logan, which really had a successful 2023. Anthony Landau is also here talking mortgages, and Anthony is back this coming Saturday. We also, back in August of last year, spoke to Renee Cross from Elizabeth Bay, a very nice spot in Sydney to own property. So we find out how that suburb is performing. And we also caught up with Caelia Collins. Now, this was an interesting one. She was telling us about a waterfront property with a basic cabin which was listed for sale for $235,000 in Bar Point in New South Wales, offering a secluded bush meets river lifestyle accessible only by boat. So we'll check on all of those stories as we go back in time to August of last year. We will do that after this.
Let's fuel your passion for property together. Join us, along with our industry experts, to help inspire and inform your next real estate decision. We look forward to 2024 with more real estate stories and more property news. You're listening to the Summer Series on the Real Estate Podcast.
I think there's so much fear out there in the marketplace from the media that this mortgage cliff is coming, that there's so many mortgages coming off their fixed rate, their honeymoon, and they'll be going from their 2% up to 6%. And I think everyone's sort of sitting back waiting for that bubble to burst and to pick up a bargain, where I think the opposite is going to completely happen.
Coming back to the PropTrack report, which highlights the lack of available properties, which we've talked about, the report also suggests a national increase of up to 5% in property prices by the end of 2023, with more growth in these larger cities. But when we look at Brisbane as being this standout performer, you look at warmer climate destinations like the Gold Coast, like Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast. We talk about Hervey Bay, even further north. So how much of an influence do you think that helps in a downturned market for some protection to sort of pull you through these hard times?
Look, I think those areas are always going to be very popular. We saw definitely post-COVID, people were able to work from home or in different locations. So we did see a massive spike on the Gold Coast and that Sunshine Coast because people were starting to move from areas and start living where they really want to live and enjoying that sort of lifestyle. And I think Queensland just offers a lot of that. There's just so much to do. There's so much growth. There's so much employment up here. You know, we've got the Olympics coming, I think 8 years, 10 years time, whenever that is as well too. So we know that the growth in these capital areas, the Goldie, Brisbane, Logan, Sunshine Coast, and even further north is still going to see massive amount of growth.
What are your investors at the moment doing? Is there any sort of thing to report on your investors?
So what we're seeing from an investment point of view, we're starting to see a big trend in dual occupancies, really hitting that sort of taste buds of investors. We're still seeing an influx of those investors. Sydney and Melbourne predominantly are still spending their money and buying up here and really knocking out that local buyer. The local buyer in Brisbane really sometimes can't compete. But we've seen the dual occupancy, because of the rental crisis. I think a lot of investors are trying to one home, but offering two sort of dwellings or two occupieds where they can get double income from. So we've seen a massive trend in that sort of a property.
From buying strategies, a fluctuating market, the importance of data, geographical differences, confidence in the market, rental yields. Stay informed every morning from 6 a.m. You're listening to the Summer Series on the Real Estate Podcast.
Getting finance ready, as we call it, or getting finance fit, it can be a little bit of a journey in itself. Someone will start the journey with us and it might be 3 or 6 months before they're actually ready to apply for that pre-approval, because they've got to make some adjustments around some of their credit limits or some of their discretionary expenses to understand exactly the point you made. Is it the house or the pizza?
Yeah. How much of a factor is the cars? Because tell you a funny little story about me. When I bought my first property, because I got into the real estate property market at 19, I had this RX4 coupe, rotary engine, full fruit, and I told the boys, look, I'm going to sell the Mazda to buy a house. And they were absolutely in shock. They said, are you mad? What are you talking about? But you must strike this where people have got high prized assets when it comes to a car, and you've got to say, hey, again, what do you want? Do you want the house deposit or do you want to keep the car?
Yeah, and everyone's situation's different. If someone's got a certain role and they're looking at buying a certain house and they need to increase their deposit, then it might be that it's a consideration to sell a car or sell a boat or sell a caravan. If they've got a car loan, it might be a consideration. Look, do you pay that out or can you afford to carry that across? So every situation is different, and we'll look at different levers, I guess, that we can look at to say, hey, if you lower your credit card limit from $30,000 to $5,000, if you pay out your car loan or pay off your HEX debt, then you're actually going to be able to afford a little bit more than if you keep all of that stuff in line. So we take them on that journey and look at all those factors to say this is how you can be in the best position to get an approval and buy the property you want that is in the market you're looking at.
Funny little side note, I tried to buy one of those RX4s a few years ago, but they're so expensive.
Yeah, I know. The cost of cars, that's another story. I think the second-hand market's almost as competitive as the new car market.
It is, yeah.
Unlock the secrets of real estate and stay informed about the latest real estate buzz with hot market trends, emerging suburbs, and hidden gems.
Like I said just before, there is a lot of activity out there, and it is definitely driven by, I think with the last 2 months where they've held interest rate rises, buyer confidence is back. We've got such an area where we have so much movement, and we've got, a lot of towers. So we have small apartments, bigger apartments. We're catering for, the first home buyers coming into the market. We're catering for these people that are downsizing, investors. And what we've got is we've just got so much movement and so many people who want, if I can say it, a bit of a cliche, but they just want a piece of this action in such a strong area.
You can say it because, real estate agents are full of cliches. That's unfair, but there are a lot of sort of cliches when it comes to real estate because it's those sorts of words, the obvious words that you do use. But if we go back, say, 4 to 6 weeks ago, did it sort of surprise you in the way that it's turned in not only the Sydney market, but particularly for where you are in Elizabeth Bay?
Yeah, so great, interesting is because I think we work in such an area, Elizabeth Bay, Potts Point, Rushcutters Bay. We work in an area where there's always demand, there's always movement. People are, coming into the area, moving out of the area. So we always have this movement. But what I found is that, I think in the last 6 weeks, what we've got is buyer confidence is back. People are satisfied in terms of where interest rates are. They can see the future more clear now in terms of how their budgets are looking, their finances are ready, and it just seems that the sentiment with the buyers is, very strong.
Well, you've actually got an example of just that buyer confidence, I guess, because you had a Rushcutter Bay. What was it? It was a unit, first time in 40 years going to the market. Only 72 square metres, but you got a hell of a lot of interest with this one and a amazing price point. So just talk to that, because I think that's a very good example of what is going on in your market at the moment.
Yeah, no, Craig, really good example. So we had the campaign as a deceased estate, uninhabitable apartment, basically. And the interesting thing is we ran the campaign without a price guide because we really didn't know where it would land, based on people's thoughts around, well, what are the costs of renovations? How are we going to do this? Because people have been conservative looking at, properties that are projects at the moment. We took it to auction. It needed to be an auction property because the market needed to decide where it would sell. And we had 16 register to, buy that property. So, what that tells me is there were 16 people ready to transact and ready to buy, which is quite extraordinary in terms of numbers and people that are confident enough to take on, a property like that. And then just expanding on that, Craig, we had another auction, 2 days after that in Potts Point as well. And we took 7 bidders through on that one. So the volume of people that are confident and ready to transact in the market at the moment is quite extraordinary.
Grab your weekly dose of inspiration to help build a real estate portfolio. We talk to the best in the business every day. Learn from the professionals and know your property with us.
So $60,000, what is that buying you?
Vacant land, usually on the back row without a jetty spot.
Just expand on that. So how big is the site, etc.?
The site would be between 500 to 700 square metres, probably about 200 metres walk from the foreshore, but those particular ones wouldn't have any designated spot to park your boat, which can make your access a little bit tricky.
So tell us a little bit about a property that you listed recently, because this will give people an idea of the sort of value for dollar. $235,000, which I understand it's got boat access. Tell us a little bit about this property.
Yeah, look, it's a great one. It's about halfway on Caelia Road. It's on the front row. Now, road is just a council access road. There's no cars there. Lovely water views. It's very close to its jetty berth, and it's got a very dilapidated shed, which might have been habitable at some point, but not so much anymore.
And sort of inquiry rates. What happens when you list something like this at that price point? Do you find that you have some people that they automatically reach for their phone and then they find out a few more of the details and then they go, yes, I'll get back to you. And then reality kicks in and they think, well, I've got kids and all these problems that forces them to stay put.
Oh, look, there's definitely a bit of that because, people are exploring a whole new concept. It's a new idea they've sort of only ever really dreamed of. But then on the other hand, I have clients who've usually been hunting for about 3 years and waiting for the right one to come up. So they jump on those pretty quickly. So interest for an entry-level block, very, very strong. We get a lot of inquiries and a lot of inspection requests.
So what is happening in your local area at the moment? It's been a very interesting 6 months in terms of the real estate landscape.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that we've sort of gone back to normal. That, big peak and rush has definitely gone where things were selling in 1 or 2 days, which was just madness. It's back to normal. And I would say the prices are holding. They're actually better than they were pre-pandemic. They're better than 2018, but just a little bit down from when it was the big peak of 2021.
Don't navigate the real estate market alone. Let us help guide you in the world of real estate every day. Make better informed decisions with the latest news and insights. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.